In this video, I'm going to talk about teaching children boundaries, okay? Now, obviously, when we're healing from our own high conflict or narcissistic relationship, usually boundaries are always a problem for most people coming out of this freshly. That's why there's so much talk around the word boundaries. We hear this word a lot, right? When we do start figuring out, oh, I was with a high conflict or narcissistic person. Oh, I don't have any personal boundaries. Oh, I sacrifice myself for the other person, right? And all this kind of starts tumbling in for you when you first become aware of it. And as you heal and as you get stronger and stronger and you do better with that, well, you'll model that better for your children, and your children will start to learn through that and, pick up on a lot of your new ways of moving through the world. But I do find that it gets a little sticky at some point, and that age point kind of varies child to child depending on their personality. There are different sticking points along the way. I find the height of the sticking points is usually between like 8 and 14, those middle range years. But honestly, little hiccups can happen at any point. And so I think a lot of my clients feel like, wow, the child just keeps falling for the other parent's manipulation. And what do I do? Before I answer that question, let me just remind you, as always, if you like this content and you find it helpful, don't forget to hit like on this video and also subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as new videos are released. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click that button. That helps me and it helps me help you. So it's a real easy thing that you can do. Just go over, click that little subscribe. All right. What do we do? Okay. When our children keep falling into this trap over and over, a lot of times, and this is hard to hear as a parent, and honestly, it's hard for me to even say to another parent, but partly you have to let the consequences fall on the child to an extent. So let me explain what I mean by that. A lot of times what starts to happen is if children are under a lot of pressure from the high conflict co-parent or the narcissistic co-parent, they will say whatever they need to say in that world out of sheer survival, right? And so one of the first things that I say to people is, look, don't be upset with your kid if they didn't defend you, or don't be upset with your kid if they kind of threw you under the bus. In that moment and in that pressure, they're just trying to survive, okay? It's not really about trying to hurt you. It's just about their own survival in that moment. And if we think about this and we think about, okay, look, I'm a grown person and I was being manipulated by this narcissistic or high conflict person for years and years and years and years, typically before I figured it out. And then I got out and now I'm still trying to heal and recover from it, right? Hence, you're watching me, right? How do we expect a little child to have anywhere near that level of emotional intelligence around this issue and the fact that they're being manipulated and how to navigate it? They don't know. They don't at all. And so, first of all, therapy. I got one word. Therapy. They need to be in therapy. They just do. If they truly have a high conflict or narcissistic co-parent on the other side, they need to be in therapy so that they can learn healthy ways of dealing with that, of being able to find their voice, express their wishes, not sacrifice themselves for the other person. All of those things, all of those cycles and bad patterns that we get into, the only hope that your children have of not doing that is through therapy. So a lot of times I tell people, like, look, if I was going to go to court and ask for anything, honestly, it'd be therapy over almost anything else. Not to say that there aren't good therapists and bad therapists. There are. I've had a lot of people that have had bad experiences and all that kind of thing. So it's important to vet people and do your research and all that kind of thing. But honestly, you're better off with a therapist involved than not, even if they're not a great one in my experience. Okay. What happens is the children then become subject to this narcissistic co-parent's manipulation. And as they start to kind of throw you under the bus, if you continue to allow them to use you as the buffer, then they just keep doing that. And then the battle sort of ensues between you and the other parent more, right? That's where the pressure is. The pressure is on the two parents. I had a client that I was talking to who's been a client actually for a few years now, about 3 years or so. And I can remember in the very beginning saying to the client, look, you really cannot talk to your children about everything. And the client was like, what? Like, my children are like, they're like part of my life. They're integrated into my world. Like, we share everything, all these things. Like, I talk to my children about all of this. How can I suddenly start compartmentalizing and having these little areas in my life that I don't share with my children? And I was like, look, I'm just telling you that the less your children know, the better for them and the better for you. Well, now you fast forward 3 years, and this client is starting to see that, because now the children are starting to throw my client under the bus to the other parent. And now the other parent is coming back and going, well, like, why did you do this? And why did you do that? And all these types of things. And so what you actually have to do is stop sharing any more than is absolutely necessary with your kids. And I know that's painful, but it is a boundary. It's a boundary that you need to model for them. There are just certain things that they don't need to know. And then when you do that, what happens is, number one, they can't slip under the pressure of the other parent because they don't know, right? If they don't know something and the other parent's pressuring them, they can't give up the goods because they don't know. If you're telling them things and you're sharing things with them, you're actually creating more pressure from them, because now they actually, when the other parent puts pressure on them, they have to make a conscious decision of, do I say this? Do I not? Do I lie? What do I do? And if I don't know, I don't know. It removes all the pressure, right? So it's really better for your children if you don't overshare. Also, it's a form of protecting them, although, it doesn't necessarily feel like that in the first instance. And then what happens is, if your children start to choose to lie to the other parent or do whatever about their own stuff or whatever they're being questioned about, then again, that's going to be on them to deal with, right? Like, if you lied to the other parent and the other parent figures it out, well, then that parent is going to deal with it in that world however they do. And when you have a narcissistic or high conflict parent, they're probably either going to, they might punish you or get angry or whatever. They might withhold affection, right? They might give you the silent treatment. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways that kind of come through in a toxic, high conflict, version that your children then have to endure. But here's the thing. Many times children that are dealing with a very high conflict or narcissistic parent on the other side hit a cracking point where they go, I don't want to go anymore, or I'm not going anymore. Okay. And I always say, be very, very careful, because you cannot tell them that they don't have to go. You cannot indulge that in any shape or form, in my experience, in the court system. Okay. You have to hold the line of, this is your parent and you got to go, until your child literally sits down, crosses their arms and says, I'm not going and you can't make me, right? Until we hit that tipping point. And again, I want a therapist involved, right? Because I want a third party that can validate that's how the child feels and that that's not coming from you. So again, that form of protection is very, very important. But what will happen is that child will eventually hit a cracking point where the pressure is so bad in the other home that they're just like, I don't want to go. Now, if the pressure never hits that cracking point, okay, well then maybe the child's learned to cope with it in some way, or, maybe the parent has changed their ways some, or maybe the parent isn't as severely narcissistic or high conflict as we thought they were, or whatever the case may be. Different personalities are different, right? So how your child interacts with the other parent isn't going to be the exact same way as you. And sometimes you'll have one child that's fine with the other parent and the other child that's not. Why? Personality differences. Your child that's not might have your personality, right? And they might be like oil and water with your ex. The other child might be more similar to your ex and might do fine with them, right? So it just depends. But in the first instance, if you are not stepping back out of it and kind of letting those consequences fall on them for however they're going to choose to deal with it, then they don't ever actually build enough pressure to crack and go, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. Because all they're doing is just keep feeding throwing you under the bus, right? Oh, it's the other parent, it's the other parent, it's the other parent. Then all the backlash is coming back on you, back on you, back on you. And even if you're ignoring it or whatever, or using the other techniques that I teach about this kind of stuff, it's still coming at you, right? It's still the flack hitting you, even if you're wearing a bodysuit, right? A protective armor, the flack's still coming at you. So when you stop oversharing and you stop letting your kids into certain parts, then that flack starts to come on them directly. And again, I know that feels kind of bad as a parent, but honestly, it's the only thing you can do to end the cycle, because either that child is going to figure out how to deal with the other parent and it's going to be fine, or that child is going to hit a cracking point where they go, I'm not doing this anymore. So if you want that cracking point to come faster, pull yourself out of it. And so many times I see parents who don't pull themselves out of it, who continue to try to be the buffer for the children, overshare, do all these things. And then the court goes, oh, look, you're alienating against the other parent. I've seen parents be accused of that. So really, there's a multitude of reasons that your children just don't understand because they're not adults and they're not in the court system and they don't know how it works. And for goodness sake, don't talk to them about the court system. That's a number one no-no rule. But your children don't understand all those things. And so you have to be the one to pull back and to assert that boundary so that they can then deal with that parent directly and either find their voice, learn how to cope with it, or opt out by their own choice. And here's the thing. You're only really going to be dealing with this co-parent until the children turn 18, right? I know that they're still the co-parent even after that, but I can tell you that my kids are 30 and 34. I have 4 grandchildren with my ex-husband, and honestly, I don't even speak to him once a year. Not even once a year. So if you choose not to, there's really not a lot of reason for you to have that ongoing interaction at that point. So really at 18, when their kids are 18, it's kind of going to end for you. But the person it doesn't end for is my children. My children are 30 and 34, and they still have a high conflict dad. That's still who he is. That's still in his personality. Now, we're 20 years older. He's slightly more mellow, I think, but those tendencies are still there. So your children have to learn how to navigate those in a healthy way. And again, if we don't teach this stuff in childhood, then what happens is the children grow up, everything's cemented like it is in our brain, and then they're in a therapist's office trying to undo all of it, right? So let's not do that. Let's start from the very beginning in modeling healthy boundaries, letting those consequences fall on them, and getting them into therapy to help them deal with those consequences. If you'd like more help navigating these types of situations, you can go to www.divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There is a video on that page that'll give you information about my group coaching programs. I have programs for moms and for dads. And I also have a one-on-one exclusive coaching program, my VIP program. That's usually for people that either want just a really high level of support and hand-holding through this process, or they've got an attorney for the children, a custody evaluator, domestic violence, some sort of extenuating circumstances in their case most of the time for this type of client. So you can also find out more about that on that page. So go over, check that out, and thanks for joining me.